On a clear night in February of 1951, Lieutenant Graham Bethune sat at the controls of a U.S. Navy transport plane en route from Iceland to America. The flight was routine until Bethune spotted a strange group of lights below his aircraft.
And we were at 10,000 feet, and this was about 15 miles away. It came up to us like that, just about that fast. And of course, I disengaged the autopilot to put the nose over. I thought we'd be able to go under this thing and not collide with it. And when I did, it's staring me in the face, and you couldn't see anything out the cockpit. We could tell it was a monster about 300 feet in diameter. As it drifted out to our right, we could see the dome.
According to Lieutenant Bethune, the object remained in this position for about a minute. It then accelerated rapidly and disappeared above the horizon. Upon landing at an air base in Newfoundland, he was debriefed and interrogated by several officers from Naval Intelligence. At the conclusion, he was ordered to never speak about this incident again.
You accept anything like that simply because you're in the military, and that's your job, is defending the country, and whatever they tell you to do, you do.
The identity of the group responsible for imposing the secrecy around the UFO issue was revealed to Lieutenant Bethune several months later in a conversation with an officer from Naval Intelligence.
And I asked him the question, I said, what happens to this report? Where does it go? He said it goes to Navy Intelligence, Chief Naval Operations. Then it goes to a Joint Intelligence Committee. Now, of course, later on, I learned that it was MAJIC, which is Majority Agency Joint Intelligence. Now, he said this was a small committee, but this committee determined whether it would affect our national security, that if it did, it would probably never go anywhere else.
Anything to discredit you, and you'd never get a promotion, and I'd spend the next 3.5 years up at the North Pole, living in a tent checking the weather balloons.
These two gentlemen began to question me about this event. And I remember, saying to them, they were being pretty rough, about it, to be honest with you. And I remember telling them, literally putting my hands up and going, wait a minute, fellas, I'm on your side. Whoa, just a minute, because they were not really nice. They were very intimidating and made it quite clear to the point that nothing that was seen, heard, or witnessed that transpired during that was to leave this building. You not to say a word to it about your coworkers and off base. Just forget everything you may have seen or heard or whatever concerned with this. It didn't happen. My logbook, I never did see that again. I know we had a new logbook the next day, a brand spanking new one to start with, and that disappeared. They gave me this document where for 5 years, it was absolutely out of the question. I could not leave the country under any circumstances whatsoever.
I was arrested. I had all my gear taken from me by men in black camis, had no name tags. They were older men, probably in their late 30s or 40s. There were other people, I guess they were government, I don't know. They were there and they had containment suits. And then they put me on a cot that they had, and they had me cuffed with those, they had me cuffed both hands down, and then they had my legs tied together with those plastic fasteners that the police use. And they had a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and he did not identify himself. He might have, I just don't remember. And he told me, if we just took you out in the jungle, they'd never find you out there. And I'm like, well, and I didn't want to say, I didn't want to test him to see if he'd really do that. So I said, yeah. And he's like, you got to sign these papers, and you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened. And if you tell anybody, you'll just come up missing. And he was a real abrasive, just a cynical asshole, I guess is the best way to put it.
I would go interview people that claimed they had seen something, and try to convince them they hadn't seen something, or they were, hallucinating or something. Well, if that didn't work, another team would come in and give all the threats, and threaten them, their family, and so on and so forth. And they would be in charge of discrediting them, make them look foolish, or so on and so forth. Now, if that didn't work, then there was another team that put an end to that problem, one way or the other.
And they're yelling at me, and they're hollering and cursing, and you didn't see anything, you know, and we'll do you and your whole goddamn family. And they're you know, it was basically that for about 8 or 9 hours. These guys, they're just off on their own. There's no oversight, no control. They just do whatever they want. They don't, I mean, and they're evil, man. These people are evil.
The pilots that had seen things and talked about it, some of them were let go. Some of them released from their flying and treated as nutcases and things like that.
I've made no money from this. I've got nothing but pain and suffering out of it, out of talking about it. I've been harassed at my home. This was used against me partially in losing a job once in teaching. I've had a hell of a time after I've told this story, but I continue to tell the story because I think it's important for people to understand that this sort of shit goes on in the government.